And welcome back to part 21 of Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, where today we're actually back in the Shinjuku Medical Center, the opening dungeon of the game. If you decide to go all the way up to the second floor, in the top left corner, you will find this door over here that will now react to your menorah when you go into it. It will only do it after clearing the Obelisk. And it is our next fiend. And it's the one that you're most likely to miss. There's the odd hint here and there that there's something over here, but there really isn't much. You can very easily miss this thing if you're not paying attention.
We exist to watch over the menorahs. As long as thou seekest the menorahs, thou art mine enemy. I, the Black Rider, shall judge thee! Thy death draweth nigh, O sinful one. Death shall come for thee when thy soul is weighed by my scale.
It's time for our third horseman, which also means after clearing this guy, we will have enough menorahs to advance through the Labyrinth of Amala, which we'll be doing after this video. We won't be doing it today, hence why the video is a bit shorter, because the third Culpa ends up taking me like 40 odd minutes in the recording, so I made that its own video, which is why this one's a bit shorter. But this isn't the only thing we're doing in this video. I'd say this one's actually not that bad. Of the fiends, like I know I've said like Hellbiker's like the easiest in my opinion, but this one's not that difficult. The only thing you gotta be wary of are the legions, because if they get lucky with a crit on Tempest, you're in trouble. If they get lucky on a crit and it gives the horseman more turns to act, you can very quickly be in trouble, which is why I push for things like Fog Breath and Warcry ASAP, and you should do too. The legions, if I'm honest, are actually a slightly bigger threat than the actual boss because of what they can do if left alone. But I genuinely feel that this, of the four horsemen specifically, this one is not a threat. That the Black Rider has never given me that much trouble. So the only one that's genuinely given me trouble in my time is the fourth one. And that's entirely because on hard mode, his buddies that join the fight can suicide bomb you. And if they do so, it's kind of a guaranteed instant kill. But this isn't the only thing we're going to be doing today. A little later on, we're returning to like the first real town you visited after the Shinjuku Medical Center. We're doing a real like nostalgic road trip back home after the Obelisk. Because there's another optional boss there. And it's another one that you can kind of easily miss. Because even if you know it's there, you might not realize that it's not available unless it's a full moon when you enter it. So you'll get something along the lines of, there seems like something's odd here. But then you'll just leave. And you're like, oh, okay. But if you enter on a full moon, then something happens. And you want to do it if you're going for all the Magatamas, because there's a Magatama reward for you after doing it. It just leads to a boss fight that's one of the more interesting ones. It's an optional boss, and it's one of the only bosses that has Diarahan on it. And as I've mentioned before, tier 3 healing magic is a guaranteed full heal, instead of it just being a percentage based or a set amount heal. It's always 100% will completely heal you, which is why almost no boss in the game has it, because it would really be unfair. The only real exception to this, and I don't know if this still applies to the HD remaster, because it didn't happen when I recorded it, but I also did it. This runs with Dante and not Raido. But in the original Chronicles release of the game, which was the version with Raido that came out after the Dante version, that was Japan only, the final boss of the game has Diarahan, but it's a scripted use after losing a set amount of HP, so then the boss could have more health than the data limits of the game. Because the final boss of the game's health, I think it's 66,666, but they wanted it to be 100,000 plus. But they just couldn't get it to be that way because it started to heavily affect the data limitations of the original release. Like, if you look into the history of this game, the biggest reason why the music has such a crunchy sound to it, and I mentioned this before, is because this game literally went to the very edge of the disk space on the PlayStation 2. They couldn't fit a pixel more on. So they had to do workarounds to add more later on. So in things like the Chronicles re-release, but they wanted the final boss to have 100,000 plus HP, they put in a prerequisite where when the boss's health dropped below around 20,000, it would use the Arahan because the full heal would then help bump it up more. As in, it's a scripted usage, it only adds like another 40-odd thousand health, so it's just barely over 100k in total, but it still is something that it does. But it's interesting when you don't play the Chronicles version though, because I won't go too much into it until we get there, but the final boss still has a healing skill, but it's pathetic. When you get later into the game, any boss that has a healing skill that's just diorama, you're not even going to acknowledge it. It's not even a blip on the radar. It becomes such a useless skill because it can only heal somewhere between 100 to 200. And when it's a boss with several thousands, 100 to 200 means nothing to you. But off the top of my head, I can only think of 2 main boss fights you'll encounter through your journey that have Diarahan as a prominent force. One that we're going to be fighting in this video, and one that, I kid you not, is going to be the penultimate part of the entire project. So not for a very long time. There might be another one that I'm just forgetting. Maybe it was a boss that just is such a such a non-existent threat that I just forgot about, but still. Also, the boss that we're coming to, I know I'm talking about the boss we get to do instead of the boss we're actually fighting, but that's because the riders, once you've dealt with the first rider, the others kind of start to become a bit more patented. It's just, there's only so much to talk about when it comes to the rider, that their main focus is keeping up 2 minions, and the 2 minions do a lot of the work. And the legions are the bigger threat, I feel, over the boss in this instance. In fact, I think I actually kill the boss before I kill the legions. Like, before I kill the legions the final time, like, I don't kill them all together. Because in fact, I think in this turn or the next turn, the rider runs out of health. Because we must be getting close. So I'm looking at the damage numbers as we go. I'm pretty sure it's nearly done. It's weakening. You can see, there he goes. He's gone. So now you can just wrap up the legions. But you see me hesitate for a second. So I'm like, these guys won't self-destruct if I leave them slightly alive. No, we can get them good. Get a real nice amount of experience for this part of the game. 8,500 is amazing for this stage in the game. And our strength is nearly at the limit I want it to be. It's at 28 raw, 30 with extras. I want it to be 30 raw before I move on to anything else. Oh, did I say you want to talk shit? Yeah, sure, give me something. I donate to this year, an emerald. Oh, okay, that's something to trade. But now we have enough menorahs to access the 3rd Kalpa of the Labyrinth of Amala. So on the next video we'll be doing that. But we've got other stuff we can clear up right now. When you're ready, return to, and the name slips my mind right this second, but return to the first town of the game that you really visited and we'll do something there. But I finally fused Sati while I'm at it. A demon that I've mentioned a few parts ago that I really wanted to get the moment I saw it was there, because Sati's very helpful for this stage in the game because she has Argidyne. She has tier 3 fire, and she's also part of the Megami clan. And with all the types of demons, whether they be beast or fairy or whatnot, Megami is the strongest law, Tyrant is the strongest chaos. Because there are demons that are neutral, demons that are law, and demons that are chaos. Megamis and Tyrants are the 2 that you will want to have near endgame if you can help it. But way back here, behind a secret door, is a special room that if you enter on a full moon, you get this little scene.
Damn it! I'm tired of everyone dunking on us just because we're mannequins. Well, you know what? We're about to hit them with the longest, strongest, wrongest demon of them all.
Hell yeah, we are! It's payback time, suckers! I don't know the details, but they say this guy is an absolute unit. And if Mara really is that magnificent, then hurry up and whip him out already!
Clearly you 2 are first-timers. Do you not know that summoning is a consummate act of patience? Besides, Mara is, how should I say, a fickle demon. Were we to rouse him prematurely, he would not be able to come to us at full strength.
Stop beating around the bush and answer us! We're done being jerked around by the bad guys, so will you summon our mean green pounding machine or not?
Guy on the right is right, Mr. Baphomet. We need the demonic hookups, yo!
Hey, you! Half-naked demon dude! Back us up, bro! Tell Goatface here to summon Mara and give us a ride on the gravy train!
See? 3 against 1. Now hurry up and get this Mara party started.
Don't say I didn't warn you. Elohim, Sabaoth, Elion, Eyech, Adier, Eyech, Adonai, Jah, Shaddai, Tetragrammaton, Shaddai, Agios, Odios, Ishiros, Athanatos, Aglahame. Well, in my rush, I have summoned Mara the Magnificent in the incomplete body of a slime.
It's hideous!
Okay, time for a boss fight against Incomplete Mara. And if you're new to Megaton, count yourself very lucky it's Incomplete Mara and not actual Mara. Because Mara's nickname, if you're not new to it, is Dick Chariot. And it's because it's a giant green penis on a golden chariot. So it incomplete just being the head, count it as a blessing. Because it's the alternative is far worse. But this boss actually has an interesting gimmick. Every time it is hurt, it will immediately follow up with Dira Hun, which is a full heal. It does 100%, which reveals how much health it exactly has. It's 2,300. But its defense stat is abysmal. And it won't buff or debuff you. You might be catching on. It's a power check. You're going to see me feel it up because I completely forgot that this boss was the power check boss. Like, genuinely, it just completely slipped my mind. It just didn't... And so, after a couple minutes, I go, oh no, wait, this is this boss. Because there's a boss similar to it in SMT 4. And in the back of my head, I was like, was that something that 4 introduced, or is it something that 3 introduced? No, it is something that this game introduced. So later on, I eventually, like, catch on and go, oh no, wait, it is this boss. But essentially, you need to come in with physical attack buff and a defense nerf. Nerf its defense to the ground, buff your attack to the sky, focus, physical strike, and then just bum rush it and hope you kill it. So it takes me a sec to kind of cotton on, but once you do it, you can absolutely kill this thing in one turn. Even if you come as soon as you can, like I have now, I assure you, you're in no danger of not feeling that you can do it. The only reason it opens after the Obelisk is because the game knows it's possible by this point. And it's not going anywhere, so if you're struggling with it anyway, like to make the damage threshold to do it, you can just come back later. Like, it's not going anywhere, you can just come back much later. I've seen a few people just leave this fight to the very end, and then just bum rush it. But as you saw there, I just did like nearly 600 damage off a basic focus strike. Now imagine if its defense was non-existent, and my attack was buffed a lot more. If you're playing on the remaster on PS4, there's a trophy for the game where it's break 1,000 damage in a single strike. This, in my opinion, is one of the earliest opportunities you're likely to get it. Later in the game, you'll be hitting 1,000 damage quite regularly, especially against the bosses, because you kind of need to get the bosses done in a decent time fashion. And I'm not kidding. Some of the bosses later on do have upwards of 20,000. I said the final boss is 66,000. If you want to get the boss done in any kind of decent rate, you're gonna need to be able to find ways of ripping out thousands of damage per strike. So it won't become a threat later on. But early game and mid game now, you're not likely to get 1,000 with the exception of this fight. Because I said you're just going to be nerfing it to the ground. Its defense is already very low. Like, this boss's defense really isn't high, so if you buff your attack, get some pieces in play, and then focus, and then just start going on the offensive, you will break 1,000 damage in this fight. Especially if your physical attack stat has been your priority, like it was for me. There's 793, so it's already close. It's not going to be enough to kill it this turn, I don't think, though. Yeah, there's the Diran. Hades Blast is dangerous. Hades Blast is heavy physical damage. So it's like tier 3 physical, group-wide. And it has a decent crit rate. It's something that's worth talking about now we got time to do it. Every single physical skill in Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne has its own built-in crit rate that is influenced by your luck, but not reliant on it. Which is why your luck stat is something I rarely bother with. Until late game where it doesn't matter so much. Because it only influences the crit rate. It doesn't dictate it, kind of thing. But every single skill has its own set in. So you'll feel it later on that there are certain skills that like hit super hard but never crit. And some skills that crit almost every single time. And some skills that feel like a bit more fair, like it's somewhere in the middle. Some that are around like 10%. Some that like do like 2%, which they're a nightmare. And some where they've never not critted. Later on, we're going to pick up Deadly Fury, and that Deadly Fury is like an 80% crit rate. Built in. Deadly Fury's crit rate is bafflingly big. Like, you will crit more often than not. And to be fair, it's something that lasts for a long while, but Demi-Fiend, although he's physically built, he doesn't get good physical skills for a while. At least I don't get him some. Like, there's a couple early-ish I could go for, but there is a part of me that's like, but I'm just, nah. Like, I was kind of in the mindset of there's other things I'd rather be sitting on Magatama-wise. Like, there's other skills I'd rather be working towards beforehand, before I go for it. And then, when we get a Magatama called Satan, that's the first... Like, if you're following along, when the moment you pick up Satan, that's the one you want to grind out if you're going for a dedicated physical build. Because the last skill of that is Deadly Fury, and it's a group-wide physical attack. It's very costly on the HP. It takes like a third of your health every time you use it, so you have to be wary of using it when you're against a great threat. Also, there's 1,658 damage. That's what I mean, of like, you buff yourself and nerf it, it falls apart, you can kill this thing so goddamn quick. But, Satan's last skill, Deadly Fury, so it hits group wide. Even though it takes a third of your health, it's heavy damage, so it does really strong damage, and it has that bafflingly high crit rate. It's an amazing physical skill that will find its home with you for the rest of the game. But there is another skill as well that we'll get even later on that's perfect for 1v1 boss fights. But I gotta wrap this up. We've got the Magatama Muse spell, which isn't great, but it's another one on the list to get when you're getting all the Magatamas. Next time on SMT3 Nocturne, we're going back to the Labyrinth of Amala. But until then, you guys take care now. Peace.